company from the mainland to investigate the disappearance of a young guy, Rowan Morrison. That's her name? You know her? No, never seen her before. You suspect foul play? I suspect murder. With very deeply religious people. Where is Rowan Morrison?
You would be out here, lady. Not the way you feel.
Where is Rowan Morrison?
It is time to keep your appointment with the Wicker Man.
Hail the Queen of the Night!
You simply never understand the true nature of sacrifice.
Well, you might wonder why I just played you the trailer for the classic horror movie from the early 1970s, The Wicker Man. Well, this film, which starred that wonderful actor Edward Woodward of Callan fame and in the 1980s The Equalizer, really scared me when I saw it as a kid. But having been a investigator of what was formerly Australia's deadliest medical scandal, HIV and hepatitis C contaminated blood transfusions and tainted blood treatments, I basically spent decades trying to get answers, right? Trying to get answers as to what on earth went wrong and trying to get help for myself and other victims, right? And every institution, every door I knocked on was basically slammed in my face. And then the other weird thing, and this is why I'm playing you this trailer, or why I played it, okay, is because, you know, like Australia, when we pay taxes, they give that to various bodies to organise things. Maybe it's a cancer council, or maybe it's this Haemophilia Foundation Australia. That was publicly funded, and it was supposedly there to represent the best interests of people with the bleeding disorder haemophilia. And yet, when I knocked on their doors and I said to them, hey, would you mind recommending a legal investigation into how 1,750 Australians with this bleeding disorder ended up with HIV and Hep C? Could you please do that? Because, you know, you're publicly funded and it would really help if you did. And you should be doing it, right? Because there are only 2,500 Australians with this bleeding disorder in the country. It's a rare condition. And they didn't do it. Instead, they ended up attacking me. And I had representatives from this taxpayer-funded organisation of the Haemophilia Foundation even recently write on my social media pages saying, I don't represent bleeding disorders community and I'm crazy, I'm mentally insane. Okay, great. So that's from that was the president of a publicly funded, a guy called Gavin Finkelstein of the Haemophilia Foundation Australia. Then I went years ago to an organisation that's been funded to like major millions, tens and tens and tens of millions, Hepatitis Australia and Hepatitis New South Wales. And I said to them, would you recommend an investigation into how tens of thousands of Australians became infected and affected by this scandal? And they turned around and said, actually, no. You know, they basically inferred it was discriminatory for people like us to want to have an investigation, to want to have help and answers as to what went so wrong. They came up with the most ridiculous logic. They said that basically if we were to be helped, if haemophiliacs or children who'd been knowingly injected with HIV or Hep C as kids, or people like me who was infected as a child, if we were to be helped, it would be discrimination against other people who'd acquired viruses from different means. And the people that were saying this were the people that weren't afflicted by any virus themselves. Instead, they were just like bureaucrats or people on public money to run charities. And this is what it has been like for the last 30 years. And I actually sincerely thought someone would help us at some point along the line. But then after I forced a Senate inquiry single-handedly 20 years ago, which I had hoped would see us be helped, but then the same officials that wouldn't help us lied under oath, which was a huge shock. And I started to realise what so many other infected blood victims in Australia had told me for so long, and I'd hoped wasn't true, that they were all in on it, and that they're trying to kill us all off so that they didn't have to pay the bill. When I say they, who am I talking about? Oh, Australia's institutions. Yeah, Everybody. The health bureaucrats, the politicians, the bulk of them, with the exception of the good Liberal Queensland Senator Gerard Brannick, who's been very kind to the Australian victims of the infected blood scandal, but all the rest of them, because they're all invested in what is Australia's third biggest business. It generates billions and billions of dollars, and that is the sale of freely donated human blood. But they don't want to admit that the business is tainted and that the business is corrupt. And so that's why, for a generation, I've realised I've basically played this character here, Edward Woodruff. You know the movie Wicker Man? That's how I see it. Now, in the movie, if you know the ending, and spoiler alert here, poor old Edward Woodruff, who's been sent to this island in the Outer Hebrides of Scotland, which, by the way, is where I'm originally from. My family is originally from the Outer Hebrides. We came to Australia in the early part of the 20th century to help establish the Australian Navy, but before then we were from these places, and they had some sort of pagan rituals and strange things going on in their past, right? So this copper goes to this island thinking he's looking for a missing person, and he finds out that he's to be a sacrifice. Well, I hope I'm not going to be sacrificed, but I think the sacrifice has already been made. They basically stole 30 years of my life. Okay, so for 30 years I had to knock on these doors thinking that being publicly funded institutions led to the right thing, and that they'd, like if you had an organisation that was there to help rape victims, halfway house for rape victims, and you turn up and you say, but the halfway house is run by government bureaucrats, right? And you turn up and say, oh, I've been raped. And they go, okay, let us help you. And you say, oh, but I've been raped by a bureaucrat. Oh, look, there's no evidence of that, and actually it's quite irresponsible you saying that, and you're an anti-vaxxer, you're putting people at risk, you're putting lives at risk. That's the sort of nightmare world that we were in. No one wanted to help us. No one in the taxpayer-funded organisations that normally would be funded to help us actually helped us. It's one of the worst cases of discrimination that you'll ever find anywhere in the world, and we've lived under it for decades. It's been a horror movie. The Wicker Man goes for probably 2 hours. Our nightmare, which is still ongoing here in Australia, has gone for decades. The infected blood scandal. If you look into it, you'll find it's so very much like the Wicker Man.